capacity here as ordered by the Chief Judge based on the pandemic. If you need to leave for a moment to use the facility or to use your phone, let the bailiff know, and then we'll hold your seat till you get back, as long as it's not going to be too long. And with that, you can call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. If I may call William Harmony to the stand. And then.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
May you remove your mask, be seated. State and spell your first and last name, please.
My first name is William, W-I-L-L-I-A-M. My last name is Harmening, H-A-R-M-E-N-I-N-G.
Now, Mr. Harmony, could you please, for the court's record, let us know what your educational background is?
I have a master's degree in psychology from the University of Illinois.
Okay. And can you please give us your background, your professional background for the court, please?
Did we do this last time?
We did, but we discussed about going through his qualifications again, if you recall.
Apparently I don't. Go ahead.
We don't have to. I'm fine with not doing that, but I thought you...
What was it based on, if you can remind me?
Can we talk off the record?
Sure, come on up.
All right, just bear with me while we get this.
Could you please give us your professional background, please?
Yes, I am a retired law enforcement officer out of Illinois, 37 years. I am a retired college professor. I was a professor of forensic psychology at Washington University in St. Louis. I have been totally retired since the spring of 2019, except for providing expert witness services. Excuse me. I've done that since 2014. I've participated in approximately 200 cases, I believe in 35 states. Probably 90% of those involve the use of firearms by the police.
Okay. So, and have you testified as an expert witness before?
Yes.
And how many times have you been retained as an expert witness?
Well, I'm approximately 200 cases. I haven't testified in all of those. A number of them settled before any testimony was required. Many of them required only a deposition. A few of them required a trial.
Okay. And how many times have you been in court to testify before?
Well, in my whole career, hundreds of times as a law enforcement officer, also as an expert witness.
Okay. And has there ever been a case where a court did not permit you to give an opinion or permit you to offer your testimony?
Yes.
And could you please describe those situations?
There have been 2 cases in the approximately 200. There are 2 cases where I was not allowed to testify, both of them in 2018. One of them was the case of Cole versus Indianapolis. I can explain it. Approximately a month before the trial, all the experts were disqualified by the judge in that matter. There were 3 on the defense side, myself on the plaintiff side. So there was no expert witness testimony at all. There was no trial. They settled that case a couple days later, I believe, for $2 million. The other one was in the case of Gonzalez versus New Mexico, or Bernalillo County, New Mexico. It was a little confusing to me because I was no longer involved in that case. It's the only case I have ever terminated my involvement in for a number of reasons. Officially for non-payment, but there were some other reasons. After I terminated my involvement, I learned a couple months later that there was a Daubert motion filed against me and the judge disqualified me. And those are the only two, both of them in 2018. I typically defend I get those filed on me all the time. It's not unique. It's almost every case. I have a way of defending my credentials, my qualifications with an affidavit. Neither of those cases was I allowed to do that.
Mhm. So other than those two cases, you don't have any other cases where you were essentially disqualified as an expert?
That's correct.
And like you said, in those two, with the one, 2018 Gonzalez, that happened a month prior after your test, they decided to settle, so your testimony wasn't needed.
That was the Cole versus
The Cole.
Indianapolis case. That's
Right.
correct.
Okay. Okay. And so can you describe any sort of cases that you've been involved in, particularly any high profile cases that you've been involved in?
Well, I just finished the George Floyd case. I was plaintiff's expert in the civil case, which of course settled. I was the plaintiff's expert in the Michael Brown case in Ferguson. Here in Milwaukee, I was the plaintiff's expert in the Dontre Hamilton case with attorney John Safran. I think those are the ones people here would recognize. There are a number of them on the West Coast that are very highly profiled cases out there that they may not. The other one in this area would be the Eric Logan case in Indiana, which is the case that came up during the presidential election with Mayor Buttigieg. That case is still pending.
Okay. And is anyone paying you for your testimony on this matter, or has anyone paid for your testimony on this matter?
No, I'm not charging for it.
Okay. And we appreciate that. Thank you. And how long have you been in law enforcement?
37 years.
Okay. In that 37-year time period, have you ever discharged your weapon in the line of duty?
Not at a human being, no.
Okay.
Were you finished with this line of questioning?
Yes.
All right, then I have a few. When you say testify as an expert, has this been exclusively as to use of force, or have been there other areas out of this? I believe you said about 200 cases where you've been qualified as an expert in areas other than use of force.
Yes, there are, I think, 5 areas: use of force, police practices, correctional practices, police policy and procedures, and forensic psychology. Use of force has made up probably 90% of the cases.
Okay, so out of your roughly 200, approximately 180 were use of force?
Yes, yes, sir.
And have these been exclusively on behalf of plaintiffs?
Almost entirely on behalf of plaintiffs, yes.
Have you testified for the defense in any matters?
There have only been a couple. There was an administrative case with a correctional officer in Chicago. I have been contacted a few times. I have worked criminal cases. I've been contacted a few times. The way I work, I don't charge for the initial review. I give them my tentative opinions, and if there are opinions that are not favorable to them, they of course don't hire me. There have been a number of cases where defense attorneys have called me and asked me to do that.
And in these 2 cases that you described in particular, those were as use of force experts?
Yes.
And you indicated as to the one issue, everyone was disqualified, and as to the other issue, you removed yourself from the case. Is that accurate?
Well, I was already removed from the case. I wasn't the reason for the disqualification. The reason for the disqualification related to some analysis of blood evidence.
That you were not found to be an expert in? Is that?
The judge in that case found that I was not an expert in that, yes.
So are there any cases where you've been disqualified as an expert in use of force? Other than the blanket, apparently, removal of everyone?
Just those 2 cases. Those are the only 2 disqualifications. Both were in 2018.
Okay, go ahead.
Your Honor, at this point in time, I ask the court to qualify Mr. Harmoning as a use of force expert for the purposes of this testimony.
Well, my understanding is basically people are qualified on a question-to-question basis.
Okay.
You can proceed.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Harmony, did you get a chance to review the Dropbox link that was sent to me by Lieutenant Joseph Roy that contained Joseph Mensah's personnel file?
Yes,
And when did you review it?
last night.
Okay. And in your review of Joseph Mensah's personnel file with the Dropbox link, did you see any documents relating to his fitness for duty that were contained in the file?
No,
Okay. Did you see any documents in his file with regards to any background interviews of Joseph Mensah?
yeah, well, I saw no background investigation in connection with his hiring. No, there were none.
Did you see any psychological testing in his personnel file?
No,
Did you see any polygraph results that were located in Joseph Mensah's personnel file?
no,
Did you find any academy evaluations or FTO evaluations that were located in his personnel file?
no, and I want to explain that just a bit. When an officer goes to the police academy, same with the FTO period, the field training officer period. The officers are not covered. They don't enjoy union protection during those 2 periods of time, so they can be released quite easily by the department. So there's a pretty heavy evaluation process. While they're at the academy, there are weekly evaluations, both academic and behavioral and physical training and so forth. That's a whole class of documents that I didn't see in the personnel file. Once they come out, then they go into the FTO program and they ride with a field training officer for 6 months to a year, depending on the department. Again, they don't enjoy union protection during that time. They can be released quite easily. So there is a heavy evaluation process during that. There were no evaluations in the file covering that period.
Okay. Did you see any, and so you didn't see also any performance evaluations in Joseph Mensah's personnel file?
No,
Now, all these documents that are missing from Joseph Mensah's personnel file, are they important to review when it relates to determining whether there's probable cause to find whether or not he, committed offense regarding the Jay Anderson Jr. shooting?
well, when I work a case, I always look at those documents to the extent that they're made available to me. I want to see how they were hired. I want to see if there were any red flags during the hiring process, during their training process, and in their annual performance evaluation. Some departments do biannual evaluations. So yes, I go through all of those to look at, to get a historical picture of their job performance. None of those documents are in that file.
Okay. Now, when an officer is typically hired by a department, is there a fit for duty evaluation that's made for that officer in determining whether they should be hired on a police force or not?
Well, let me be clear. Fitness for duty is a specific type of evaluation. That is not what is completed when they're hired. There is a battery of testing that takes place when they're hiring that includes interviews, background checks with friends and family, their past job performance, financial records, and then they typically take a psychological exam and a polygraph exam. Assuming they get through that, the final step is they do an interview with the chief usually, and then the selection is made.
Okay. Now, let me see. I'd like to show you what's been marked as exhibit, I believe this, let's see, 89. It's a December 15th, 2016 letter that was written by a Dr. Rick Bauman to Chief Weber regarding Joseph Mensah's fitness for duty.
Yes.
I'm going to give this to you.
Judge, is this my water? I'm sorry.
I wouldn't drink it.
Losing my voice.
Do you need water?
If I could, please.
Is it okay if we get him water?
Well, I think a person in Washington, D.C. recommended that to us last year. The only water I've got is out in the hallway now. It's apparently enhanced for safety, so I don't have my, I got rid of my water. You feel free to step out if you need something.
I'm fine. I'm fine. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I misspoke. This is Exhibit 90. You know, Your Honor, if it's okay, I'd like for you to get a water real quick.
I'm fine.
Okay. So Exhibit 90, dated December 15, 2019. It's entitled Joseph A. Mensah, Fitness for Duty, seen December 7, 2016. Now, you indicated that you did review the Dropbox link that contained Joseph Mensah's file that was given to me August of 2020, correct?
That's correct.
And in Mensah's personnel file, as you reviewed it, was this December 2016 letter in that file?
No.
Does this letter contain any medical information?
No.
Does this letter of December 2016 contain any biographical information?
No.
And you've reviewed on Exhibit 67, the email that was sent to me by Lieutenant Roy, that I had Joseph Mensah's complete personnel file, disciplinary records, background investigation files, performance evaluations, and internal investigation files, aside from his personal health history and biographical information. Do you recall seeing that email?
Yes.
So in theory, if this letter existed in December 2016, this letter should have been in the personnel file that I received last year, correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
But it wasn't there. So we'll go letter by letter. Now, with regards to this letter, this was signed by Dr. Baumann. Is this what a typical fitness for duty letter looks like?
No, it has no resemblance to a fitness for duty report and evaluation.
Well, let's take a step back. What is a fitness for duty report?
A fitness for duty report, first of all, it's not something that's taken lightly. It's a very complex and a very structured process with specific guidelines, and those guidelines are consistent with federal statute, such as OSHA and the ADA. So it's a fairly complex process. It involves interviews. It involves psychological testing. Those tests are designed to do two things. They are designed to identify psychological problems, diminished emotional functioning. They're also designed to identify officers who are attempting to put forward a good picture of themselves, which they do, and most everybody does in those cases because they want to go back to work. They also include recommendations. The 3 recommendations in a legitimate fitness for duty evaluation are fit, unfit, and fit with modifications, meaning modifications in how they do their job. If I could can I refer to the chief's earlier testimony?
Yeah, well, we'll get to
Okay.
that. Okay.
Because it's relevant.
Okay, great. So typically, when is an officer evaluated for a fitness for duty?
Well, there's 2 different evaluations. There's one called a psychological intervention that takes place after a critical incident. That's sort of a shortened version of the evaluation process. It takes place in the first week after the incident. There's a follow-up at 1 month, 3 months, and just before the first anniversary, which tends to be kind of a critical period for someone who's been through a critical incident. There has to be, now that one is automatically done. The fitness for duty evaluation is done if there is objective evidence that the individual's job performance is being affected by something, doesn't matter what. The purpose of the fitness for duty evaluation is to find out what, and if it's safe for them and the public to put them back out on the street.
So would you say is a officer involved shooting, is that considered a critical incident?
It is, yes.
So in theory, Joseph Mensah should have been involved in at least three fitness for duty evaluations. Is that accurate?
Well, he should have been involved in 3 psychological interventions, which is the initial evaluation. And then any step along the way, there should have been a fitness for duty evaluation if there was any indication that his job performance was being affected. After 3 shootings in such a short time, I would argue that that's enough, that a fitness for duty evaluation certainly needs to be completed, possibly after 2 shootings. There has to be some objective evidence that can be articulated to justify that evaluation.
And who sets the standards for fitness for duty evaluations?
Well, there is only one set of standards, and that's the standard put out by the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Again, regarding the earlier testimony, I think I heard that organization called a know-it-all organization as if they just put out their own set of standards. That's the only set of standards, and it's the set of standards endorsed by the American Psychological Association, and they're the ones that regulate who can actually complete a fitness for duty evaluation. It's a very extensive set of guidelines, and it is the only set of guidelines that is used out there.
And this is used nationally, this set of guidelines?
It is, yes.
Okay. And so based on those guidelines and the testimony of Police Chief Weber, does it sound like the Wauwatosa Police Department followed the International Association of Police Chiefs guidelines in relation to fit for duty evaluations of Officer Joseph Mensah?
No, I don't see where any of those guidelines were followed.
Okay.
Do we have these guidelines available for this hearing?
We do through our witness.
Okay, are you going to enter any of these into evidence since?
Well, I was going to get his testimony about the guidelines.
And that's it?
I will enter something into evidence, thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay. So could you please describe the guidelines that the International Association of Police Chiefs had with regards to fitness for duty?
Yes. Number 1, who can conduct a fitness for duty evaluation? The guidelines indicate that it must be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. It must be a APA board certified psychologist in police or forensic psychology. The reason for that is in order to determine if an officer is fit for duty and if it's safe to put him out there, this individual must have a pretty keen awareness of what police officers do on a daily basis and what kind of stressors they deal with. So the guidelines are a board certified police or forensic psychologist or a psychiatrist who has specific training in this particular area.
And based on the letter of December 15, 2016, Exhibit 90, does the person that authored this letter, does he, meet those guidelines for fitness of duty evaluations?
Well, he identifies himself as an organizational psychologist. An organizational psychologist is one who, number 1, they don't deal with pathology. They don't do psychotherapy. They do things such as work with companies on how to package a product to make it sell better, or they work with workplace environments to get maximum productivity. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Deputy.
Unless Dr. Bauman, I believe that was his name, unless Dr. Bauman has specific training, APA certified training in the area of police or forensic psychology, not only is he not qualified to do a fitness for duty evaluation, he may very well be committing an ethics violation by doing one. Now, I'm not saying he's not. He may have that training. I don't know. But based on what he called a fitness for duty evaluation, the December 15th, 2016 letter, this tells me he doesn't even know how to do a fitness for duty evaluation because this letter has no resemblance to one.
And what does a fitness for duty evaluation typically look like?
Well, it's a report. The ones I have looked at are anywhere from 10 to 30 pages long. The report begins with the objective evidence that has led to the evaluation and the request. The request comes from the chief, typically, or the sheriff. It includes a section of interviews. The officer interviews, interviews of family that they're closest to, interviews of coworkers. It includes psychological testing. The guidelines actually specify which tests are to be used. Two of them are the MMPI-2 and the CPI. Those are important tests because they're normed on a police population, so they're very good for law enforcement. And then finally, there is a recommendation process where the person conducting the evaluation makes a recommendation for counseling, for heightened supervision, whether or not they're even fit to go back to work. All of those things are included in the ultimate report that goes to the chief, not to the officer.
Okay. And based on the fitness for duty evaluations, the chief looks at that and then he or she can make a determination whether or not that officer should get back out on the street.
That's correct. Two things are important. The officer is not the client of the psychologist in this case. The department is, the chief is. These things, these evaluations include implied consent. So the officer knows when they are directed to submit to an evaluation, number one, they can't refuse, they have to. And number two, the results of that evaluation will be disclosed to the department.
Mm-hmm. And I think you heard testimony from the chief that the psychologist, I think he's Ted J. Shrinsky, last name SCHRINSKY, called him after the Antonio Gonzalez shooting sometime in 2015, 2016, and essentially, stated that, as I understood, that Mensah is fit for duty. Is a phone call to verify that information, is that normal procedure?
No, it's not normal. It's not acceptable. And I would argue that any professional that does that is probably jeopardizing their career, at least their accreditation with the APA.
And typically the fitness for duty evaluation should be done by a licensed psychologist. Is that correct?
Psychologist or a psychiatrist.
Okay. I'd like to mark for the court what I'm labeling as Exhibit 88, which is a online sort of biographical information of Jay Shrinsky, first name J, J-A-Y, last name SCHRINSKY. Could she give it to you in the court? Hold on one second.
Is there some kind of certification offered, sir, to licensed psychologists or psychiatrists, deeming them competent to conduct these types of evaluations?
Yes, sir, there is. It's board certification for psychologists through the American Psychological Association, board certification for psychiatrists through the American Medical Association.
I'm talking about specific to evaluations subsequent to a, what did you call, critical event?
Yes. So, for example, psychologists, since 2008, the American Psychological Association has had a police and forensic psychology subsection. So they have a separate board certification just for that.
Okay, so it's separate and apart from the traditional board certification.
It's a separate board certification. APA has 14 different board certifications. That's one of them.
Okay, thank you.
Now, you've been given what's been marked as Exhibit 88, which is an online biographical information that we just downloaded over the lunch hour of Jay Shrinsky. It looks as though he's a licensed social worker, but is not a psychiatrist, at least that's not, or psychologist. Is someone like Jay Shrinsky, based on what we see as his online bio, is he qualified based on his educational background to perform a fitness for duty evaluation?
No,
Why not?
because he's not a PhD level psychologist or psychiatrist, MD.
Okay, and it says here he's a licensed clinical social worker.
Correct.
Okay. Does that give you pause that this is the main sort of mental health professional that has been, it seems like, is evaluating Officer Joseph Mensah in relation to whether or not he's fit for duty after the shootings, after the 3 critical incidents he's been involved in?
Well, it does. I'm not questioning anybody's competence here. They're probably very competent people, but this is a highly specialized area that requires psychological testing. These gentlemen are not qualified to even do psychological testing. You have to be a PhD level psychologist to interpret psychological testing. And that's an important part of this because that's the instrument that sort of identifies the hidden aspects of emotional distress and also whether or not the officer is trying to put up a good front and make themselves appear healthy when they're not. Mm-hmm. So yes, it does. It causes me a bit of distress that this apparently is a department that has no procedures in place for this process and doesn't recognize the national standards.
Okay. And based on the letters of September 14th, 2020, which I'll give you, and the letters of August 31st, 2020, which are labeled as exhibits 90 and 91. Let me give you those right now.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Now, with the letter dated September 14th, 2020, this is Exhibit 89. It's written by Marcia Williams, LPC. This is not a fitness for duty letter, is it?
Well, no, it's not a fitness for duty evaluation. She is in no way qualified to conduct one. This has to do with counseling. Counseling is something totally different from fitness for duty.
Okay. Now, based on the other letter that we gave you, Exhibit 91, dated August 2020, that letter was written by Dr. Rick Bowman. Is that a fitness for duty evaluation?
It's not. And I would argue that letters such as these should not even be written. Both of these individuals are talking about past interactions with Officer Mensah. There are some pretty strict guidelines, even for the LPC, which is, licensed professional counselor. You can have an LPC with a bachelor's degree. They're not necessarily highly trained people. They're counselors. So they may very well be quite competent in their area, but they all have some very extensive documentation requirements in what they do. So rather than write the letters, they should be providing the actual documents from those evaluations or those interactions. And if they're not there, then they shouldn't be writing these letters.
And again, based on your review of Officer Mensah's personnel file, you didn't see any fitness for duty evaluations of him.
That's correct.
And based on your review of Officer Mensah's personnel file, you didn't see any psychological assessments of Joseph Mensah. Is that correct?
That's correct. I didn't even see routine performance evaluations that we all go through in our jobs.
And that's normal, that you're supposed to have routine performance evaluations as a law enforcement officer?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Just so we're clear, are you testifying that there were no performance evaluations in the file you received, or what?
I am testifying that I saw no performance evaluations, no evaluations during the FDO period, and no evaluations during his academy period.
Jesus, none. God almighty.
Thank you. Well, let's talk about use of force training in Grand v. Connor. Now, Grand v. Connor sort of set out when officers are allowed to use force. Could you please explain to the court your reading of Grand v. Connor and how you interpret that?
Well, Grand v. Connor sets out the standard by which we evaluate the use of force. It's a 1989 U.S. Supreme Court case. It remains to this day the standard that we use. It has not changed. And it provides us a method of determining whether or not an officer's use of force is what the Supreme Court called objectively reasonable. That is the ultimate issue in any use of force case. In other words, would a reasonable officer in that same situation, faced with those same circumstances, would they have used the same level of force? That's the answer that's the question we try to get answered. The Supreme Court provided three questions, a three-pronged test. They are not all inclusive, but if the case does not meet any of those three criteria, there's no sense going further. It was not a justified use of force. So the three questions are, number one, what was the underlying crime? that led to the use of force. Number two was, in the case of a deadly force case, question number two was, did the subject pose an imminent threat of death or serious injury to the officer? And question number three is, were they actively resisting or attempting to escape? So in any use of force case, we attempt to answer those three questions through an analysis of the evidence. And that gets us to the point of testifying, here's what the reasonable officer would have done.
In relation to the Jay Anderson Jr. shooting that occurred on June 23rd, 2016, was the use of force that Joseph Mensah conducted, was it objectively reasonable?
Well, I don't believe it was, and I can go through each of those three questions because there are some important issues there.
Okay, so just before we go into that, you've had a chance to review the 172-page Milwaukee Police Department report, is that correct?
That's correct.
You've had a chance to review the scene squad videos from Joseph Mensah's car, is that correct?
That's correct.
What else have you reviewed?
I reviewed the entire investigative file, the Wauwatosa Police Department reports, the Milwaukee PD reports, the videos, the personnel file, which included mostly just his training history and some special orders, and there was some letters related to a crash he had gotten into in the past. That was about all that was in there. And other than that, in addition to the reports we've been talking about, I think that's about it.
Okay. And so let's go through the three-prong test in relation to Jay Anderson Jr. as laid out in Grant v. Connor.
Yes.
All right. Number one, the first sort of question is, what was the underlying crime?
Yes.
In relation to the Jay Anderson Jr. shooting, what was the underlying crime?
Well, the underlying crime was at most a minor ordinance violation. Now, I want to point one thing out. When I read the letter sent by the local prosecutor to Chief Weber, that individual also did a basic Graham analysis, which they typically do. And the prosecutor answered that question. The underlying crime was the fact that Jay Anderson was armed. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but my opinion is that is a misinterpretation of Graham, and that is someone who is stretching that standard as far as they can to make it work. It is not a crime in America to be armed. It's a crime to be illegally armed. It's a crime to do something illegal while you're armed. But the fact is, when Officer Mensah fired upon Jay Anderson, he had no probable cause for a crime at that point. So it's improper to say that the crime was the fact that he was armed. The crime was an ordinance violation, being in the park after it closed.
In the state of Wisconsin, we're allowed to have weapons, carry concealed weapons that are available to us, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And like you said, an ordinance violation, that's not a crime as defined in Wisconsin statute, right?
That's correct.
Okay. The second part of the three-prong test is, did Jay Anderson pose an imminent threat to Officer Joseph Mensah? What is your evaluation of that?
Well, an imminent threat means that the conditions are such that it's more likely than not that Jay Anderson is going to pick that gun up and shoot at Officer Mensah if Officer Mensah does not shoot immediately. So it's a pretty strict standard. Now, I don't believe there was any threat. Number one, we can watch the video for ourselves. I think, as I testified last time, Officer Mensah did not shoot Jay Anderson because he reached for a gun. He shot him because he lost sight of his hands. If you stand back improperly, as he did, to the point where you cannot see that gun or his hands, there's no difference between someone reaching for an ID or someone reaching for a gun. He put himself in that position, and he shouldn't have. Now, I think Officer Mensah, the question he can't answer is, why did he let him reach 3 or 4 times before he decided to pull the trigger on the 5th time, I believe it was? What had changed? I don't see anything that changed. I think he realized that problem, and I think he too stretched the Graham standard, which they do. And I think he added the narrative about the fact of lunging with his body. Now, we can all watch the video for ourselves and see whether or not he lunged with his body. I don't believe he did. I don't believe you can pick a gun up with your body anyway. So if he was reaching for anything, I believe he was reaching for his ID. And of course, we know that at this point, we don't know where the ID was found because the officer who found it 20 minutes later apparently had some memory loss. We don't know where the gun was found because we don't have an objective source to tell us where that gun was found. We have a Wauwatosa police officer who picked it up, took it back, and put it in the trunk of a car. So the evidence is contaminated. So from my perspective, we have a young man who's in a car. He's blinded by takedown lights. He appears to be in the video trying to tell Officer Mensah something. You know, for example, I have my ID. It's right here. I have never seen a case where someone is going to pick up a gun and shoot at a police officer and not do it immediately. Number one, they're committing suicide if they do that. There's no indication here that Jay Anderson was suicidal. I have yet to see a case where an individual who did that was trying to fake out the officer by reaching multiple times. So for me, in determining and evaluating the threat, I don't believe there was an imminent threat. I believe Officer Mensah missed some critical opportunities to de-escalate this. All he had to do was ask him to step out of the car. He said himself he was up at the window when Mr. Anderson rolled the window down. All he had to do was reach down and pick up that gun and tell him, for everybody's safety, I'm going to hold this until we're done. You know, it's right for him to check to determine whether or not it was legal. But instead, and to this day, I don't understand why he backed up out of sight from the gun, and then and the timing. I mean, he called in that he had a gun. He never called in on the radio and said he was pointing a gun at him or that he had a gun in his hand. He said he has a gun, and then a full minute passes before he fires. I don't know what happened during that minute, except for the 30 seconds that we see on the videotape, and I don't know what happened for the 3 minutes prior to that. I don't see a threat. I see a young man who is trying to tell him something, obviously, and for whatever reason, Officer Mensah improperly had his gun out and pointed directly at him. That is a level of force. You have to have a reason to point a gun at someone. And I don't see that reason because he was not under arrest, nor did he have probable cause to arrest him for anything at that point.
So just Officer Mensah having his weapon out, pointed at Jay Anderson without shooting, that's use of force as well.
Oh, absolutely. And police officers are taught that. You don't pull your gun out unless deadly force is likely to be justified. If you pull it out, you keep it at the low ready. You keep it in a safe position. We can all see on the videotape he's got it pointed directly at him. There's been no crime committed. I don't know why he did that. I don't know why he stayed where he was standing. I testified last time. I don't believe Jay Anderson had a chance once that gun was pointed at him.
Your Honor, at this point in time, I'd like to show the video of the shooting, if that's okay with the court.
It's fine. If family members want to step out for this is something, we'll give them an opportunity. One of the things I was going to ask about is I looked at the letter from Mr. Laverne to or by Mr. Laverne, I should say, to Chief Weber. Is that the letter that you were referencing earlier in your testimony?
Which one, sir?
The letter from to Chief Weber from Assistant District Attorney Laverne?
Yes, it is.
Exhibit 55?
Yes.
And in that letter, there are a number of references to Video Enhancements Council. And it wasn't clear to me whether or not you had in your possession an enhanced video or the original video.
I do.
You do what?
I do have the enhanced video and the original video.
And what did we see last time?
We saw the regular video. I was going to play the enhanced video.
Okay.
Sorry, just let me get this together.
What do you guys think of harmoning so far? I like this guy. He did really good the first hearing. This guy knows his shit.
Do you want to try and show this as a co-host on the screen, or what do you want to do?
Yes, if I could just show this. Well, I don't even know, what does that mean as co-host?
Yeah, so we can all see it. Yes.
Do I need to log in?
Did you hook your laptop up via HDMI to that TV? Is that what you just did?
Yes, I just put in this cord. Is that what you said?
Go ahead.
What?
So the first hearing, they only showed stuff on this TV so the gallery could see. The second hearing, it was another like quadrant.
No, I'm not on Zoom.
Yeah, get on Zoom. But this is where they were having problems though. There might be a lot of echo.
Oh, I see.
That has nothing to do with me.
Okay, got
if
it.
you guys start
So now I don't
hearing
have to put in the cord.
weird echoes.
I
Right.
think that's correct.
All right, good.
Not home
Sorry,
to it?
just,
We'll find out.
sorry. Let me see. Did I see that? Thank you.
At least give us one 20-year-old that knows what's going on with all this stuff.
Or getting something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so last time they had to connect into Zoom in order for us to see like a screen share. This is like a technology nightmare with this courtroom.
I just want to try and find out if she knows when she can do that, so we know how far off to set the
Just,
next hearing.
So I'm on, I think. Now I'm okay. It's on. Is that better? Perfect. Sorry.
Okay, then she can share the screen, right?
I think so. Is there audio that needs to be heard? I'm not sure how that all.
No, the audio isn't important.
Screen share, copy.
I don't remember now. Where do we get it?
Picture.
Make co-host?
Nope. That hurts. Actually, computer.
Here?
Since you guys like watching body language,
No.
pay attention to Kim's
Let's
eyes.
make her co-host, huh? I believe that's where it comes from, yeah. You should be able to screen share now.
So, Your Honor, I'd like to mark this video as exhibit, I believe we're at 92, which is the enhanced video that was created by the FBI. Mr. Harmony, can you see the screen? Do I need to
Yes,
move?
I can.
So if you guys don't want to see this, you might want
If you don't mind moving
to
that
exit
one
out for a minute.
I can just give
towards him. Whatever you want.
It's not super graphic, but you're gonna obviously get the picture of what is happening on this fuzzy video. So if you don't want to see somebody getting murdered,
Would you like to make a little record here?
Log out now,
This
and then
video, since we're not going to
come back.
have any formal authentication.
Your Honor, for the record, I received this enhanced FBI video of the J. Anderson Jr. shooting from Attorney Safran's office.
And your understanding is he received it pursuant to an open records request to the Wauwatosa Police Department?
That's correct. And I received this video from his assistant back, I believe, in the fall of 2020.
All right.
Thank you. I'm playing it.
Okay, so once again, if you don't want to watch this, exit out, come back in a couple minutes.
Is this the extent of the quality, or is there something wrong here?
This is the quality.
Oh, this is enhanced.
Yes.
All right, then.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's unreal. See, it's crazy. Like, I'm looking at it on the computer screen, and I can't see anything. And then through the phone that I'm streaming on, the quality's a little better. But then looking at it on my
I'll stop the
second
video.
phone,
Now, Mr. Harmony, were you able
the
to
quality's way better.
view the video from the iPad?
Yes, I was.
Now, based on your review of the enhanced video, did J. Anderson pose an imminent threat to Officer Joseph Mensah?
My opinion is no.
Based on your review of the enhanced video, did J. Anderson appear to be resisting or attempting to resist Officer Joseph Mensah?
Well, no, and nor could he because he wasn't under arrest at that point.
Mm-hmm. So is it your opinion that was Officer Mensah's use of force objectively reasonable?
My opinion is it was not objectively reasonable. My opinion is it didn't meet any of the Graham criteria.
Okay. I'd like to show you Exhibit 65. I believe the court was referring to this, which is the letter from DA Kent Laverne dated December 5th, 2016.
I guess I'm at a loss here to try and understand what can be seen in this enhanced video, sir, that we don't see in the original video, because I can make out very little in this enhanced video.
Well, that's, my opinion is the original video is the best one to view. This is not my enhanced version.
I mean, was there something that you saw in the enhancement that, as opposed to the original video, that added something to your ultimate conclusion?
No.
Okay.
In fact, I have my own blown up version of it that's actually better than that, but there's nothing that I see that changes my opinion.
Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything there.
Now, based on this letter of December 5th, 2016, which was labeled as Exhibit 65, this was the letter that was written by District Attorney Kent Laverne regarding the fatal critical incident of the J. Anderson shooting on June 23rd, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And according to this letter, he wrote that he decided that the shooting was justified. Is that correct?
Correct.
And based on this letter, the district attorney's office refused to charge Joseph Mensah.
That's correct.
Thank you. Now, according to this letter, it states that J. Anderson did not have his identification on him. Is that accurate?
No.
Do we know where J. Anderson's identification was?
No.
Do we know if he had it on him?
We don't know anything about it except that a Wauwatosa police officer ended up with it at some point and handed it over to the Milwaukee detectives.
Mm-hmm. Now, according to this letter, like you said, I believe he referenced Graham v. Connor. Is an officer's training and an officer, whether he does not follow this training, does that sort of add to the calculus in terms of making charging decisions and finding probable cause?
Yes.
So if an officer doesn't follow their training, do you believe that consistent with Graham v. Connor, that should be taken in consideration when making charging decisions?
Well, it's two separate issues that both must be looked at. The Supreme Court said in Graham v. Connor that in order to determine the mind of the reasonable officer, we have to look at the totality of the evidence, and that would include the officer's training.
Okay. Have you been to Madison Park?
I have, yes.
Okay. Your Honor, if I could share my screen again, I'd like to show a drone video of Madison Park, if at all possible.
Yeah, it's fine.
Can I share my screen? Let's see.
You should be able to. Nothing's been changed.
No problem. Now, what I'm showing is, first, what I want to show you is what's been marked as Exhibit 71. It opened. There we go.
Yes.
Sorry. We're almost done. We'll get you on that flight. Don't worry. And if you look, do you have the iPad? Can you see on the iPad? Okay.
I have it, yes.
Thanks.
We can't see it.
So this is a picture made by Milwaukee County Parks of Madison Park, right?
I'm not sure who made it. I'm assuming it was Milwaukee PD, yes.
Okay. Now, based,
No, Milwaukee County Parks.
Or, I'm sorry.
I'll take judicial notice of that. He's not from here.
yeah, sorry.
I don't know if you were going to put that on the screen as well or not.
Okay. Now, based on you going to Madison Park, you see where it's, I don't know why.
That exhibit won't come up?
This is showing, is the map coming up on this screen?
No. Just your documents.
It's showing on my screen. What do we do?
Are you still on screen share?
I'll stop share, then I'll start share again. Stop and screen share. Share. Okay, good. So you see where it says the big P on the map?
Yes,
That's the parking lot, correct?
yes,
Okay. And according to this map, there's only one way in and one way out of Madison Park to that parking lot. Is that correct?
I believe so. I do want to say that when I was there, it was under a foot of snow, so I didn't get the best look at it. But I believe there's one way in and out, yes.
Okay. And that road would be Glendale Avenue?
Yes.
West. Okay. So now what I'm going to show is what I'm marking as, and hopefully this works. Exhibit 83. Exhibit 83 is a drone video of Madison Park. And I'll put it fast. You see it?
Yes. Yes.
Do you guys see it on the screen?
No.
Okay. Let me see. I'll stop and start. Oh, there we go.
You have to stop it again after you put the map up and then,
No problem. Sorry about that.
and who took this footage?
I took this footage.
Okay. You know when?
What's today's date? I took it last Saturday.
All right.
So I'm showing you is Exhibit 83, which is drone footage of Madison Park. So according to the map, my car would be driving up West Glendale Avenue. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And this is the main thoroughfare into Madison Park, correct?
Yes.
And the only road that leads into Madison Park.
Yes.
I'll have it go faster. To the right on this video, I'm gonna pause it. To the right on this video, do you see that building?
Yes.
Okay. Is that Madison Elementary School?
Yes.
And presumably they had a camera on Madison Elementary School, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So let me just play it. And we're going up around that curve. Do you see that on the map?
Yes.
Okay. Now you have viewed photographs of Jay Anderson's car relative to Joseph Mensah's car, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Pause. Now, the car that's in the parking lot, you see that gray car? Not the black car, but the gray car?
I think we could call it the lighter colored car at the, near the top left, left the center of the screen.
Yes.
Yes.
I see something different on my screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, I see it.
Okay. So that car, is that similar to how Jay Anderson had his car parked?
Yes.
Okay. So he was facing towards the main thoroughfare to Madison Park.
That's correct.
Okay. So I'll continue playing.
So this is presumably what Mensah would have had to have done.
Now, based on your, I stopped it. Based on your review of the file and the documents, did Jay Anderson Jr. have a front license plate?
I don't recall.
Okay. But based on your review of the documents, did Joseph Mensah call in Jay Anderson's license plate?
Yes.
Okay.
He only had a rear plate, not a front one.
Let me stop that real quick. I'm going to show you quickly what's been marked as Exhibit 74, which is the front of Jay Anderson Jr.'s car.
So presumably Mensah either,
This has been marked as Exhibit 74.
Mensah either drove around like she's demonstrating or walked
Does J.
around that
Anderson
car.
Jr.'s car have a front license plate?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Well, no one's identified Exhibit 74, so
Sorry.
someone needs to identify Exhibit 74.
Okay. Exhibit 74, what are we looking at?
That does look like Jay Anderson's car.
The car that J. Anderson Jr. was driving on June 23rd, 2016?
Yes.
So I've marked this as Exhibit 74.
And it appears to have a police marker to the front right. Does that mean that you obtained this through the police department or what?
I did, Your Honor. I apologize.
Okay. Well, it's also.
Yes.
All right.
So what I want to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 75. Let's see. Exhibit 75 is a picture that's been obtained by the Wauwatosa Police Department. And this is a picture of the back of J. Anderson Jr.'s car.
Yes.
Based on your review of the file, does this appear to be that?
Yes, it does.
And based on your view of the picture now, do you see a back license plate in J?
Yes.
So presumably, Joseph Mensah at some point had to be behind J. Anderson Jr.'s car, correct?
Correct.
So let's go back to the drone video. All right. So now the black car is behind the light colored car, which we know Joseph Mensah had to be down behind there at some point. Now, based on your view of the files and the pictures regarding the J. Anderson Jr. shooting, is the way the black car is parked in front of the light colored car, is that similar to the way that Joseph Mensah parked his car on June 23rd, 2016?
Yes. About 26 feet apart.
Okay.
It would be helpful for the record if you would identify where we are on this video that we're looking at right now.
Okay. Where we are in this video is this is a video of the Madison Park parking lot that was taken last week, Saturday.
Right, that's not what I meant. I'm sorry if I was unclear. Where on the video, 1 minute and 6 seconds, 1 minute and 10 seconds, we really should have that for each time you show it.
Okay. So the video is 4 minutes and 47 seconds, and we'll go back.
I believe this is Exhibit 83.
Exhibit 83,
Is it on a disc or a zip drive or what?
it's going to be on a flash.
Okay,
Exhibit 83 at 3 minutes and 31 seconds, the video stopped, and we see the black car behind the light colored car. For Exhibit 83 at 2 minutes and 36 seconds, approximately, we stopped and see the black car entering the parking lot of the Madison Park. And at 4 minutes and 47 seconds, we see the video stopped, and we see the light colored car facing the black colored car in the parking lot of Madison Park. So, Mr. Harmony, you indicated that this picture at 4 minutes and 47 seconds is an accurate depiction of where Jay Anderson Jr.'s car was parked and where Joseph Mensah's car was parked.
Yes,
And so we know that Joseph Mensah's car back was to the main thoroughfare of Madison Park.
correct.
Now, we talked about, is this part of training? Is this consistent with an officer's training that they would be parked to the main entrance road, the only entrance road into a park?
Is it part of their training that they would be parked in this manner
That's correct.
with a suspect vehicle? No.
Where should he be parked?
Well, he should be behind him. It's an officer safety issue. Now, to approach the car, he's approaching from the front of the suspect vehicle, which could certainly run over him at some point if he wanted to. He's also lighting himself up with his own lights by doing it in that manner instead of pulling in behind him.
And we know that based on the video that Officer Mensah had his driver's side door wide open, correct?
Yes.
And based on your review of the file, did he know if anyone else was in the park?
Well, no. I believe he stated to one of the other officers that he did not know if there were other people in the park.
And based on your review of the file and in listening to Chief Weber's testimony, he stated that there is a long gun or a rifle that's in his car, correct?
Correct.
And based on your review of the file, did Joseph Mensah presumably kept his car running?
Yes.
Is that consistent with officer training that when you're conducting a traffic stop, you would stop your car, leave your driver's side door wide open, leave the car running, have a long gun in the car, and then approach the subject head first? Is that typical police training?
Well, typical police training is you don't approach them head first like that. Now, as far as leaving the car running, many departments have something on their belt that allows them to lock and unlock their door. So most of them will get out of the car, shut the door, lock it, and approach from with a locked door so nobody can get in their car.
And we went over the vehicle contacts training of Wauwatosa Police Department last
Yes.
time you were here.
Yes.
And based on your review of the vehicle contacts training as given by Wauwatosa Police Department, is this how Officer Mensah should have parked his car?
No.
Again, where should he have parked his car?
Should have been behind him. The training is you are behind him, you're at an angle, offset somewhat, but that's to protect the officer against traffic. We don't have traffic here, but he still certainly, for officer safety, should have been behind him.
Okay. And based on your review of the training of Wauwatosa Police Department for a traffic stop, when you're involved in a traffic stop, they are required to turn on their audio microphone, correct?
Yes.
Did he do that?
No.
Did he explain why he didn't do that?
If I knew, I don't recall now. I may have forgotten why.
Do you recall him saying that he tried turning his button on several times, but it didn't work?
Yes, I do recall that now. Yes.
And he said that at the scene, correct?
Yes.
And the following day on June 24th, he was interviewed by Luke O'Day, correct?
Yes.
And that was, I believe it was exhibit, let's see. Let's see. Exhibit 59. Would you like to refresh your memory by looking at that exhibit?
What was it again?
It was the interview of Luke O'Day to Joseph Mensah.
I don't have that in front of me.
Would you like for me to give it to you?
Sure. Yes, please.
When? Hold on. Sorry, first let's look at Exhibit 58. Exhibit 58 is the Lugo Day review of Mensah's squad video. I believe the date that the reported date is June 29, 2016.
Yes.
Now, this is a report that was created by Lugo Day where he's listening to Mensah's squad video, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And let's look specifically at on page 22. What says page 22 on this? At 3:16 and 29 seconds. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. Lieutenant Gayrish asked Mensah, did you have this recorded by any chance, correct?
Yes.
And how did Mensah respond?
He said, I tried to hit the button a couple of times, just a regular occupied auto. I went around to the passenger seat, knock and knock and knock, nothing and nothing. Look down, just doing my search, whatever, and I see a gun there. Pop it out. Hey, is that a gun? Step it up. Then the whole time, kept doing this. I'm not reaching for it. It's nothing there, nothing there. Stop, there's a gun right there.
So this is where Mensah essentially said he tried the button a couple of times and essentially it didn't work.
That's correct.
Okay. But you heard testimony from the chief that there was no evidence that his auto recording didn't work, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then the next day for Exhibit 59, Lugo Day had a 47-minute conversation with Joseph Mensah, right?
Yes.
Do you know if this was recorded?
I don't believe it was. They usually say in the first paragraph if they're recording. I don't see that.
And if a person refuses for their interrogation to be recorded, it should also state that, right?
Yes.
Is there any indication in this report that Lugo Day asked Mensah if he could record this conversation?
I don't see that. And if this is an internal affairs interview, the officer doesn't have the option of refusing that.
What exhibit is that?
This is Exhibit 59. No problem. I have an extra.
Could be.
So according to this report by Lugo Day, the 47-minute conversation, Joseph Mensah doesn't mention that his audio recording didn't work, correct?
Correct.
According to your view of the file, Mensah doesn't indicate why he wasn't recording it with his squad video prior to the shooting, correct?
That's correct.
How were we able to capture any of the shooting?
With the dash cam video, but once the shooting was complete, he activated it, goes back 30 seconds and captures the 30 seconds prior to the shooting.
Mm-hmm. And that's how we have it, just based
Yes.
after the shooting.
Yes.
But we do know that according to Exhibit 59 also, that I believe it's the last paragraph, Joseph Mensah indicates that he went to Madison Park at 12:30 and turned on his red and blue lights, right?
The last paragraph?
Yep.
Yes.
And when you turn your red and blue lights, the recording automatically starts, right?
It should. Yes.
Did you review any recordings of that 12:30 encounter with the two people that Mensah purportedly had?
No,
And you reviewed all the videos and all the photographs that were given to you in relation to this case, correct?
yes.
Would you say that's unusual or relatively standard in cases that you've reviewed, not to have this recorded in any fashion?
That's unusual because it's usually automatic when they turn their lights on. Most cases I work involve.
Talking about the interview now, sir.
The interview, that is very unusual. I've mentioned an internal affairs interview. This is a criminal interview. It's clearly not internal affairs. It's Milwaukee PD. Those are always videotaped, in fact.
Okay. And typically after a shooting like this, should Mensah been able to go back in his vehicle, or does his squad car become a crime scene?
Yes,
So he shouldn't go back in his squad vehicle touching things.
no, he should immediately have another officer assigned to him, and he should be kept out of the scene.
And we know that when Mensah stopped Jay Anderson for the traffic stop, that he just had his squad takedown lights on, correct?
That's correct.
Do you recall what time Milwaukee Police Department arrived at the scene?
I don't recall.
Okay. If I told you it was 3:59 a.m., would that sound about right?
Yes, I know it was relatively quick.
Okay. And so once Milwaukee arrives at the scene, then Mensah definitely shouldn't go in his car anymore, correct?
Well, Mensah should not even be there at that point. He should be taken to another location with an officer to accompany him the entire time until he is interviewed.
Did that happen here?
No.
Okay. What happened here?
Well, he remained at the scene. He did get in his car. I believe he turned his lights on. He shouldn't have handled any evidence. He shouldn't have been anywhere within the taped off area of the scene.
Mm-hmm. And typically for these homicide investigations, they have an officer that serves as a scene investigator.
Yes, a lead investigator, yes.
And does the lead investigator also have a scene investigator that sort of
Well,
notes?
there's an individual designated to keep track of who comes in and who goes out of the crime scene, yes.
Okay. Is there any individuals that take note of what the scene looks like and writes it down in a report?
Any officer who is at that scene should write a report documenting their involvement, whatever that involvement is. Now, in this particular case, any Wauwatosa police officer, they had two functions that night: render medical aid and protect the scene. They had no other function at that crime scene.
Mm-hmm. And you know, based on your review of the vehicle contacts training, Wauwatosa, that for a traffic stop, Mensah is required to have put on his red and blue lights.
Yes.
Did he do that?
No.
Now, I want to refer to Exhibit 42, page 46. You don't have that, but I'll give it to you. Just wanted to say for the record. Now, according to Exhibit 42, page 46, a Detective Nicholas Johnson was tasked to conducting the scene portion of the investigation. Did you see that report?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And in his report, he arrives at 3:59 a.m. and he notes the officers that are there from Milwaukee Police Department and the Wauwatosa Police Department.
Yes.
Okay. Would it help you if I gave you this report to refresh your recollection?
Sure, please.
How much longer are we going to go on this? He is going to miss his flight.
We're almost
How much
done.
longer?
This is it.
When I told you 10 minutes to the airport, I forgot the vice president was here today.
You'll just have to get out of my way.
Good luck with that.
We're almost done, I promise.
Okay.
So according to this report, I believe it's the third page in this report, the scene detective is noting different things in the scene. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And according to this report, he notes that he sees Jay Anderson's car. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Does he see any other vehicles?
Just the Altima, the Nissan Altima of Mr. Anderson's.
Does he note any police cars in his report?
A Wauwatosa police vehicle, vehicle number 3. Vehicle number 4 was a Wauwatosa police vehicle. I believe that's it. At least two additional Wauwatosa vehicles.
And do you see which vehicle is Joseph Mensah's vehicle?
Well, it's identified by the vehicle number, which is P224. It's neither vehicle number 3 or vehicle number 4.
Okay.
I'm
So-
assuming vehicle number 1.
Okay. So according to that document, P224 was presumably Joseph Mensah's squad vehicle.
Yes.
Okay. And according to that document, does it say that his squad takedown lights are still on?
No, it just says the red and blue lights.
So his red and blue lights are on when the Milwaukee police arrive.
That's correct.
And he's the one that has access to his vehicle.
Yes.
So at some point, his squad takedown lights was turned off.
It would appear so, yes.
Does that report say when his squad takedown lights were turned off?
No.
And at some point, someone, and presumably Joseph Mensah is the one that has access to a squad vehicle, his red and blue lights were turned on.
Yes.
And when your red and blue lights turn on, that's consistent with what's supposed to be turned on for a traffic stop, correct?
Yes.
Oh my god.
Do we know what time that his red and blue lights were turned on?
This motherfucker, bro.
No.
So we just note that they are magically on when the Milwaukee investigative team was there.
That's correct.
I have nothing further.
But that's also the, one of the mechanisms by which you start the recording on the dash camera, is it not, sir?
That's correct.
Anything further?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. You can step down. Good luck. You're getting out of here on time.
Yeah, thank you. Safe travels.
Have a safe trip.
Your Honor, can I come and get the stuff?
Yeah, we're going to take a 15-minute recess now. We will resume at 3:40.
Oh shit.
Think so? I'm a little shaky on your time estimates at this point. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, like a role play? It's okay, but I like to try and get it on the video if possible. I suppose if you're not, you could log out if you don't think you're gonna. I guess, just trying to think, looking at these 4 pictures. Yeah, maybe we won't be able to capture that on the video. I guess unless it's, well, I guess she's gonna have him act a few things out. I was hoping to get it on camera, but. So I suppose if we maybe try to do it in between the 2 tables, you see, if you look on the screen, you see we've got the left side of the tables there. I could just put it on the, one of the screens. See.
All right, so we can do it right here. That's perfect. This works.
Actually be on this side,
On this side's better?
if you look at the camera here.
Okay, yeah, that's easy. Thank you.
Okay.
Or even like that.
So yeah, you had asked about one party consent. So in Wisconsin, because it is one party consent, just the one party needs to know. The other party doesn't need to be informed that they're being recorded or not. And then in two-party consent states, both parties have to be informed and both parties have to consent. And then it gets difficult too, where broadcasting that, I don't know a state offhand, but let's say you call me and you live in a two-party consent state. You initiate the phone call, you call me. I'm in a one-party. I can record you, but I cannot publicly play that recording because you live in a two-party state. Then you start violating wiretapping laws and who is it with like the radio? Is it the FCC? Whoever has control of like radio waves, you start violating that shit too. But now if you live in a one-party consent state, I live in a one-party consent state, I can record you and publicly release that audio. And then it gets weird around businesses. If you're recording video and audio, that has to be clearly marked that you're recording audio. If that's not clearly marked, that can get a business in trouble. And same thing with like even your house, especially the exterior. Who asked that? I don't remember who asked that. Who asked that and why? Kathy asked. What made you ask that, Kath, if you're still here? Police don't have to let you know anything. They don't need to inform you if they're recording, and they're legally allowed to lie to you about it too. So like if you specifically say, "Are you recording me?" they can say no and still record you. That's why, like, it's just generally, like, if you're being charged with something and, you know, you have to they want you to talk when they stick you in an interview room. You generally don't say shit. But that's the thing too, right? So we just recently came across a situation with some individuals getting arrested during a protest. One individual chose to remain silent, and they were charged with additional charges. So even though you do have a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent once you're placed under arrest, there are certain things, depending on the state that you live in, there are certain things that you legally are obligated to answer. So depending on the state, it depends. Either prior to the arrest or after the arrest, you still have to identify. That varies between states. Some states you have to identify prior, other states, once you're arrested, you have to identify. Not identifying will actually get you charged with an additional crime if you live in that type of particular state. The other thing too, there's a Supreme Court case law on this, but even though it's kind of common sense that I don't need to talk, I have the right to remain silent, you do have to verbally invoke that. Again, that depends on the state that you're in, but it is kind of a federal thing. It's like national. And the scenario, it depends as well. And then it depends on the initial encounter of the situation as well. That's why it's super important. So if you guys, if anyone's watching this through a restream, you are watching Never Stop Media, just come to the actual source. This is the channel that you're watching. We got a lot of views on the last video, and there wasn't that many people live watching this. So if you are watching this through a restream, come to Never Stop Media LLC Facebook page. That's where this is being streamed. So while we are waiting for all of this, so I said in the last stream that we got an email response to an open records request. This is another department that was in Kenosha during the unrest, and they are releasing records to us, which are pretty important. Based off what their response was and the types of records that we asked for and what they're releasing to us. There is a fee for those records. So we are trying to raise $50. That's how much they're charging us. We're trying to see if they'll just put it on our external hard drive so that we don't have to pay, but it sounds unlikely that that'll be the case. So I believe we're still going to have to pay. So we're trying to raise up $50 ASAP, so that we probably not today, but ideally tomorrow, we can go pick up these records. We do have another video, which is this here, that we're going to be releasing after this case. I'll be honest though, this video from Kenosha, this one's honestly not the most exciting. And there's 3 clips in this video that we couldn't slow down. Something's wrong with the files. So there's a little portion in here where people are like super speed walking. There's nothing I can do. Something's wrong with the 3 little video clips. But it's the corner of Sheridan Road and 56th Street by the courthouse. It's not the most exciting, but we're still working on all the videos. We're about halfway done with August 25th. So we still have the other half to go, and then we'll start working on the 24th. So we're kind of doing it backwards so that on the actual YouTube channel, it will go in order from the 23rd through. Otherwise, if we did it the right way, the 23rd, it would be, all the videos would be listed backwards on the YouTube channel. So that's why I'm kind of doing it backwards. Plus, you know, more people are interested in the 25th anyway, so it works out. But yeah, this is a pretty crucial this open records request that we're getting with in respect to what we asked for. These records are pretty crucial. So if anybody wants to help, every dollar helps us. What are we doing? Are we fucking muting us and shit? We want to hear all the secret conversations. What the shit? So yeah, so that's crucial. So trying to raise that by today so we can go pick this stuff up tomorrow and see what kind of juicy stuff. Did file, if you guys were here and you saw that we live streamed, you know, those youngsters that were trying to do their little memorial for their 2 friends that died in a reckless driving accident. Suspended the pursuit. In the article that was posted, I think it was by Fox 6, I think is the one we shared. If you actually watch the video, it shows that MPD did not suspend that pursuit. And that was captured on somebody's Ring doorbell. So that individual gave the video footage to that group, and that's how that video got leaked out. And I believe now MPD is changing their story. So we're working on getting that video as well. So I'm going to go talk to that individual. But I did file an open records request with MPD, so we're waiting on response. Now, every mainstream news article that I've read about that situation, everything is listing it's still an active investigation. So we may not get anything right away in regards to the incident with that reckless driving that MPD did not suspend and cost the lives of Lucas Rigdon and Anthony Lopez. They were 20 and 22 years old. So, and I went, you know, after I live streamed all of that police interaction with their memorial, I went back out the next day. I was there from 5 till like 11, but there was nothing to, nothing to film.
Yes,
All right,
I do.
here we go.
Please remove your mask. You may have a seat.
Thank you.
State and spell your first and last name.
Ricky, R-I-C-K-Y. Last name is Burems, B-U-R-E-M-S.
And Mr. Burns, you were a member of Milwaukee Police Department. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could you please explain to the court your professional experience?
Well, I joined the Milwaukee Police Department in 1982. I worked late shift for the first 3 years, and then 5 years early shift uniform patrol. During that time, I was also a field training officer. And after that, 3 years plainclothes narcotics investigation. Then I was promoted to detective, 1 year gang crimes, about 2 years property crimes. Then I went into violent crimes for a few years, and then 10 years homicide.
Okay. So you were a homicide detective for 10 years.
Yes.
And as a homicide detective, what are your duties?
To investigate homicides, serious shootings, police-related incidents, uses of force, police-related shootings, in custody deaths, and just very serious incidents.
And about how many homicide investigations have you been a part of?
Well, when I was in the homicide division, we averaged about 120 homicides a year. So if you multiply that by 10, that's 1,200. I also investigated homicides as a police officer and as an entry-level detective too. So I would say somewhere in the area of 1,000 homicides.
Have you ever been involved in any officer-related shootings?
Yes.
About how many?
Personally, myself involved in?
No, I mean, I'm sorry, in an investigative capacity.
Well, investigated maybe 15 to 20. I was involved in my own police-related shooting once.
And how long have you been part of law enforcement?
32 years.
And in that amount of time, how many times have you fired your weapon while in the line of duty?
I've never fired. As a matter of fact, I had one situation where I could have, and I saw the guy a couple days later, and he thanked me for not shooting him.
So with regards to the one shooting that you referred to before, what was that in relation to?
Well, myself and 3 other detectives were checking a residence for a homicide suspect. He had killed his girlfriend, and myself and 1 detective were coming in the front door. The other 2 detectives were already in the house. As I'm walking in the front door, the guy is in a chair about maybe 10, 12 feet in front of me. And the two detectives are standing to his right. And just as I walk in, and I do have my gun out, and it's at my side, it's down along my leg. And this guy reaches under his leg as he's sitting in his chair and pulls out a gun. And he actually threw the gun. He didn't point it at me to shoot me, but as soon as he pulled it out, one of the other 2 detectives shot him. I think he was hit once or twice, and that was it. But I never fired a shot because, I mean, it's a split second, but he didn't point it at me, so I didn't shoot at him.
Okay. And is anyone paying for you to be here today?
No.
Okay. Now let's talk about your experience as it relates to,
Split second, but he
Crime
didn't point
scene
it, so I didn't
reconstruction.
shoot him.
in your capacity as a homicide detective,
Interesting.
did you ever have any training related to crime scene reconstruction?
Yes, I've had formal training. And I just want to say that it begins when you're a police officer and you become involved in these types of situations, but it becomes more formal when you're a detective. I've attended several schools. The there's a pretty good school in Green Lake, Wisconsin, Homicide Investigation School. I've attended the basic and the advanced practical homicide investigation seminar. Homicide Investigation School at MATC South Campus, Reed Interrogation School. But to me, the most crucial part of learning these things is first having a desire to learn about them, not just being ordered to go to a school, but really wanting to learn about them, and then learning from more experienced detectives. And as you, or when I got into homicide, you're held accountable. I mean, there is a competition between detectives. You don't want to be shown up. You don't want to miss anything, but sometimes you do miss things, but you are held accountable for every aspect of the investigation that you're involved in. It's a very intense and high level of investigation. It really is. The more you learn, the more objective you can be, and the more objective you can be, the more effective you can be in your investigation. So that's the evolution of becoming a good detective.
Okay. And specifically as relates to crime scene reconstruction and as a homicide detective, have you ever participated in sort of recreating a crime scene?
Yeah, every crime scene you respond to, you are involved in recreating it because it's just part of the investigation. But sometimes you are specifically assigned to recreating or reconstructing the crime scene, which it encompasses utilizing photos, videos, measurements as far as where every aspect of the crime scene is, mapping out. You have to find a reference point, and then you use that to graph out every piece of evidence. And then also you document it so that, like if you take one of my reports that I did 20 years ago, even though the scene itself may have changed over time, you should be able to read my report and put everything back in place based on what's in my report and the photos.
As far as you know, does the Milwaukee Police Department use a crime scene reconstructionist, like a specific person that's assigned to always reconstruct crime scenes?
Well, when I first became a detective for homicides and also for fatal accidents, they would use the city engineer. But that stopped, and now detectives, for instance, in this situation, there would be one and sometimes two detectives, but in this one there was one assigned to focus on nothing but the scene because it is very intense. You have to concentrate. Again, you don't want to miss anything. You want to make sure you document everything. So that is that detective's only job is the crime scene itself. He doesn't do any interviews. He confers with other detectives as far as the information they got, because that can be germane to the crime scene, but he just concentrates specifically on the scene.
Okay. And as a lead, have you been a lead detective on shooting cases or homicide cases?
Yes.
About how many times?
Again, thousands of times. And again, being the lead detective, it's not a matter of prestige. It's a matter of desire and wanting to be involved and wanting to learn and having a curiosity about what happened. And I always had that throughout my career. I was always involved. I always wanted to be involved. And I got a lot of enjoyment out of being involved.
With your proactive policing, did you ever receive any awards?
Yeah, I did. We used to get like merit arrests, which are felony arrests that you make based on your own investigation. It's not something that you get sent to. So I probably had about 20 merit arrests. Earlier on in my career, I think either the third or the fifth year, I was stabbed. And I actually felt like I did something wrong. But I ended up getting a class, I think it was a Class B citation, and I got Officer of the Year. And at the time, I didn't understand, well, it's like I got stabbed. Why would I get Officer of the Year? But I understand, the nuances of it now. But those are some of the awards that I got.
Okay. Have you ever testified about the significance of things that you've seen in homicides and the importance of crime scenes?
Yes, I have.
About how many times?
Thousands of times.
Okay. Have you ever, in your capacity at looking at homicide scenes, particularly as it relates to looking at bullet wounds to the decedent, have you ever testified in relation to blood splatter?
Yes, and I have, but that type of information comes into play well before prosecution. It comes into play while you're still at the scene, and then when you with homicides, there's 3 meetings a day on every homicide: the day shift, the second shift, and the third shift. So these are discussions that are had within these meetings. They are vetted by other detectives, lieutenants, and even sometimes captains before they're even prepared for presentation to the DA's office. And then when and if they're issued, they come up in court, and then you testify about them.
Okay. Have you ever investigated where you've been able to look at forensic pathology?
Yes. And again, it's the same thing as is with blood spatter. These are things that come into play early on in the investigation, and they are analyzed throughout the investigation. And, you know, it's good when you get enough information to charge somebody, but you don't always, but they always come into play.
Have you ever testified or investigated, and wrote reports about bullet wound tracks?
Yes, and those come into play not only in homicides, but in shootings, or even when shots are fired and no one is hit, when shots are fired into cars, into houses, because the trajectory of bullets, they tell you a lot about where the suspect was standing, where the victim or the object that was hit was. You don't always readily find the shell casings, but if you have an idea what the trajectory are, if you follow that trajectory, it will lead you to the shell casings. It'll also lead you to any damage that is subsequent to the actual scene.
Okay. Have you ever been able to look at a crime scene and give observations or opinions as to where the positioning of the person that was shooting a weapon versus the decedent?
Yes, and if I could just give a quick example, in just one quadruple homicide that I was investigating, initially they thought it was a triple homicide and a suicide, but just the location of a stick of butter was enough to let us know that it was actually a quadruple homicide that was staged to look like a triple homicide, suicide. So,
okay, I'm going to jump a little bit.
All right.
In terms of time, do you believe that an objectively reasonable officer in Mensah's position would have used the amount of force that he used under the circumstances that he was in?
Absolutely not.
I'm not sure if he's testified as to what he's reviewed in reaching any opinions that he's going to state today. So
thank you.
The foundation first.
Sorry. So Detective Burms, could you please describe to the court what you reviewed today in relation to the Jay Anderson Jr. shooting?
Yes, I reviewed the investigative reports from the Milwaukee Police Department, from the Wauwatosa Police Department. I reviewed the video from Madison Elementary School. I reviewed the crime scene photos, the crime scene video. I think that's it.
Did you review Officer Mensah's personnel file?
Yes, I did.
Did you review the investigative report of Stephen Biskubich?
Yes.
Did you review the District Attorney Kent Laverne's letter dated December 5th, 2016?
Yes.
About the ME
The
report
ME report? Yes, I did.
and photos.
Yes.
And did you have a chance to go to Madison Park itself?
Yes, I did.
And based on your review of all the things that you just indicated that you did review, do you believe that an objectively reasonable officer in Mensah's position would have used the amount of force that he used under the circumstances?
No.
Looking at jury instruction 1175, homicide by negligent handling of a dangerous weapon. Do you believe that Officer Joseph Mensah operated or handled a dangerous weapon?
Yes.
Did Joseph Mensah operate or handle a dangerous weapon in a manner constituting criminal negligence?
Yes.
Did Officer Mensah's operation or handling of a dangerous weapon in a manner constituting criminal negligence cause the death of Jay Anderson Jr.?
Yes.
Do you believe that Officer Mensah was in imminent danger or risk of great bodily harm to himself?
No.
Do you believe that Officer Mensah was acting in self-defense when he shot and killed Jay Anderson Jr.?
No.
Do you believe that there is probable cause to charge Officer Mensah with homicide by negligent handling of a dangerous weapon under Wisconsin Statute 940.08?
Yes.
Looking at jury instruction 1347, entitled Second Degree Recklessly Endangering Safety. Do you believe that Officer Mensah endangered the safety of Jay Anderson Jr. on June 23, 2016?
Yes.
Do you believe that Officer Mensah endangered the safety of Jay Anderson Jr. by criminally reckless conduct?
Yes.
Do you believe that Officer Mensah was in risk of great bodily harm or death?
No.
Do you believe that there's probable cause to charge Officer Mensah with second degree recklessly endangering safety according to Wisconsin Statute 941.30 subsection 2?
Yes.
Thank you. Now let's talk about crime scene reconstruction as it specifically relates to Jay Anderson Jr. and what happened on June 23rd, 2016. And let's go through his day. Can you give this to me? Oh, sorry, give it to Ricky.
Thank you.
So for the record, this will be marked as Exhibit 73. I'll share my screen. Now, Exhibit 73 is a photograph of, first to the left is a map of Madison Park as created by the Milwaukee County Parks Division. And to the right is a photograph that was taken by a Milwaukee Police Department officer of the scene at Madison Park in the early morning hours of June 23rd, 2016, which I received from the Wauwatosa Police Department. Do you see that, Detective Burns?
Yes.
Now, we have, for both pictures, they're, as best as can be, facing in the same direction. Could you please put an X on the restroom for the Madison Park map?
Yes, and I'm going to try to activate this pen.
Okay, so hit markup.
Yeah, markup. It's obscured by. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, I've got it now. Markup, and then I know there's a pin on here somewhere.
The first pen is to the left.
Yeah, it's obscured. But let me see if this. So you want me to draw an arrow down Glen?
No, I want you to put an X first
Oh, by the
on the restroom for
Okay,
the
let's
map,
see.
on the maps picture.
Okay, yeah. Mark. Here, let's try that again. Mark up. Oh, there's the pin.
You
Okay.
see it?
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, could you please put an X on the photograph where the restroom is also? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, for the map picture, could you please draw an arrow down Glendale Avenue? And then for the photograph, could you please draw an arrow down as much as you can Glendale Avenue?
Okay, this line is going to be kind of parallel to Glendale Avenue because we got the trees there.
Oh my God, I know.
It's here.
And just make it into an arrow. That's good. Okay, thank you. So this will be Exhibit 73, so we'll print this up and give it to the court.
The combination of photo and map.
Yes, and his markings.
All right.
So based on this photograph, we see that where is Mensah's car parked in relation to Glendale Avenue?
It is to the north and to the east of 100th Street.
Okay. And so is Mensah's car, the back of his car to Glendale Avenue?
Yes, it is. It's to the back of Glendale Avenue, which is the drive that enters the park.
Okay. And is that how he is supposed to be parked?
In relation to doing a traffic stop?
Correct.
No, not at all.
It was an
Where
accident.
should Mensah's car be parked?
In relation to doing a traffic stop, first of all, I've done thousands of traffic stops. I've never done it like this. I've never seen anybody do it like this. This is not trained. A traffic stop is always done with the front of your vehicle facing the rear of the target vehicle.
So based on your training experience, Mensah's car should be behind Jay Anderson's car, correct?
Yes.
And do we know if Officer Mensah's car or if Officer Mensah was behind Jay Anderson's car at all?
Yes.
And how do we know that?
Excuse me.